Hi, Faye. I'd like to thank you for joining me today to talk about housing. Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands that make up the Cowper electorate, the Dunghutti, Gumbaynggirr and Biripi people, and pay my respects to elders past, present and future.
Great. Thanks for having me, Emma.
Pleasure. So let's get started and talk about the cost of housing. We know it's no secret that house prices and rents have been skyrocketing across the electorate and much of regional Australia. I'm interested to hear your view about the local housing situation and the impact or the potential impacts that a lack of affordable housing is having on our workforce and our community.
Yeah, it's definitely, the prices have totally gone through the roof in recent times. I think over the last 5-6 years, in some places, the prices have doubled. And I guess there's a few things that have contributed to this. Much of it is, I guess, we've had people moving from the cities up into our regional areas. And so that's creating a bit more of a demand for housing that's driving up prices. I think also even in the cities, we've had a lot more international foreign investment in our private home ownership. I know that over the 2019 and 2020 time, $17 billion was invested from overseas interest in our private housing. So, these sort of things really do drive up the price of houses. And like you say, it really does have a big impact on local people's lives, especially when they can't access affordable housing or even rentals. I know that some people have expressed concern to me that they can't even get a rental because a lot of them are now used as accommodation, holiday accommodation with those various companies that do that. So, I really do think there needs to be some sort of investigation into how we can stop that happening so much and leaving people without somewhere to live. It's a real issue.
Yeah, and that leads quite well into the next question, which is around the role of government in housing. Following on from what we've just talked about and the issues you describe, what do you see as the role of government and you specifically, if elected, in the housing space? Are there local priorities or broader federal initiatives you'd champion? And what's achievable and what's aspirational?
Look, I think over the years, I can think back 20 years when they brought in the first home buyers grant, the government, I guess they had the idea to try and help young people especially get into the housing market. But unfortunately, I think it's just backfired. These sort of schemes have actually increased the cost of housing. We've seen it. You could look back at the data and you could see that as soon as they introduced these first home buyers grant type systems, the prices just did rise accordingly. And so it's really not helpful. All it's doing is just increasing the costs to buy houses. So, I guess governments have tried to do things to improve the situation, but so far what they've done has not worked. So there really needs to be, real in-depth conversations, investigations into how we can improve things, how we can help young people get into the housing market. I think a lot of them fall into the trap of getting into this huge, big mortgage straight up and, they don't work their way up slowly to get into a house, and so they bite off much more than they can chew, and it just is so stressful for them when they can't make their repayments. They lose out. They just are totally crushed by that experience, and it really is bad for them overall.
Yeah. And I guess if we look at the next topic, housing and climate change, we're no strangers to intense weather events in Cowper. We've had drought, bushfires, floods and storms. Thankfully, we didn't experience the level of devastation that Lismore did recently with their 2 successive floods. But there are some big questions being raised around housing and the role of government in dealing with these issues. How do we deal with housing and climate change? And how do we ensure that it isn't the groups that are already vulnerable that are facing the biggest impact and risks?
Well, that's right. I'm having people contact me on this very issue. As part of the Paris Agreement that we signed with the United Nations, we've agreed to do this climate change mitigation. And many people are concerned, saying, what are they doing? How often are they doing it? What are these chemicals that they're using to cloud seed and create all this weather? And why is it happening when we've already had so much rain? And, you know, people are saying they've got mold in their homes, it's destroying their house. And obviously we saw it with the floods in Lismore. So people have all these questions about what's going on, why are they doing this climate change mitigation? And, you know, it's just really affecting my health and my family and my home. So, you know, what is going on?
Yeah. And finally, let's talk about some housing solutions. You know, you may know from our work, the Housing Matters Action Group is very focused on unlocking innovative solutions while also advocating for broader system changes. Is there anything that you see as a key project or concept or policy that you think would make a big difference in the housing space that you'd like to mention as we finish up?
Well, I know there's been grants or initiatives with the federal government where I think there was one in Bellingen, you know, $5 million from the government and then $5 million from a private organisation to come up with this affordable housing for Australians. And I think that can be good, but we need to be really careful that, you know, it is being directed to the people who need the most support, who need the most help. You know, other grants get given to help upgrade and improve resorts in the area. And I just think that's an unfortunate use of government money, of taxpayers' money, when we should be directing it towards affordable housing, not just holiday accommodation for people who go on a holiday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, thanks, Faye, for your time today and your willingness to talk housing. I'm sure we could talk longer about any of the topics that we've covered, and all the best with the campaign.
Right. Thanks so much, Emma, because it is a really big issue, and I think the major parties just aren't talking about it. And it's the biggest living expense that people face, housing. So they really need to address it, and now's the time before this next federal election. So thanks for your time, Emma.
Excellent. Thanks, Faye.